G'day guys, Aaron here. In this episode of Building Skimmer, I make a budget router table, I install some lights in my shop, and I start marking out and making templates to cut out the bulkheads. Stay tuned. G'day, my name is Aaron, an Aussie bloke with a funny Dutch last name. 20 years ago, I had an adventure sailing to the remote Torres Strait. Now, I'm building a 22-foot catamaran to recreate that adventure and have many more. Join me as I build my boat and get sailing again. So big shout out to my wife and kids for a new router for Father's Day. And with the router table, I want to use things I've already got. So that means using scrap plywood like I'm doing here, finding some machine screws in my box of spare bits and pieces, and in they go into the base plate. Yep, fits a treat, 4 of them, job's done. Find the position where I want the router to go on the plywood, mark a hole with a screwdriver, and then get a spade bit to drill through one side and then flip it over and do the other side. That way you get a nice clean cut. As it turns out, I actually made a mistake here. Not when I drilled this hole, but when I subsequently marked the base plate down with the pencils, my pencil through the hole. I got them in the wrong spot. I don't know how I did it, but I messed up a little bit, so I had to make the hole bigger. But here I am, pencil marks through those holes. This is where I had a bit of a boo-boo, and quickly drill through. So far, this thing's taken me about 5 or 6 minutes to make. It's really been quite dirty, quite fast. But as I said, using things I've already got, which is great. So it didn't cost me anything extra. Countersinking the tops of the machine screws. Yep, looks great. A couple of burrs there to remove, and then screwing it in from the underside. And then to make sure it doesn't come out, I'm going to add some small nuts here as well. And I'll double up on the nuts. You'll see that shortly. Yep, there I go. Putting some nuts on the inside, on the underside. And now you see the hole's a bit bigger, so I'm going to clean that up a bit. And then I'll mount the trim router. This is a 400 watt trim router, which is going to be plenty powerful for what I need. And this table here I'd already made a couple of years ago for my bandsaw. Originally I was going to hold it down with clamps, but I thought, hang on, I'll just screw it down. So 4 screws, 1 in each corner. And here we go, going to do a test. So a bit of MDF for the bulkhead template, some double-sided tape, and I've got my master camber curve, which I already marked out and cut. So I'll put that in there, and then let's get this thing set up and give it a test. So here we are setting the depth. I actually got the depth wrong by 0.5 millimeter, but that's why we do tests. And I also learned that I'm pushing the template through on the router table the wrong way. It's best to start it so it goes into the rotation of the router bit, and I'll figure that out in a little while after I make some adjustments here. Yep. And then take 2 in the test. Obviously keeping my fingers well back from this. There's no protection here at all. And here we go, I'm using it in the correct way, and it just cuts off that excess MDF beautifully. But look at all that dust. So this thing is an outside machine only. Yep. That's what you call a really simple DIY router table. It'll do the job. With the router table made, I picked up some 4mm MDF board from the hardware store. Check this guy out. And cut it into 2mm wide strips. And the strips will be for making my bulkhead templates. So this dust goes everywhere. So I'm being really careful to wear my dust mask and making sure that I collect as much as I can whilst I'm cutting it. I then trimmed those strips down to find my straightest pieces, and they're going to be the ones I'll use to build the sides of my bulkheads. And of course, I had to clean up afterwards, and my wife was happy because it looked like I was cleaning the front of the house, so brownie points there. Win-win for everybody. It was getting a bit dark in the garage too, so I had these soft box lights that I've been using for some other videos. So I thought, why not mount them to the ceiling here above where I'll be building the holes, and they came out a treat. So the router table is made. I've got my lights set up now. I've also made a really cool stand for the full-size plans. I've got a piece of plywood down. It's time to start making the templates for the bulkheads. I've already made one. Let me talk you through the process on how Richard explains in his plans how bulkheads are made. So on sheet number 1, Richard has a diagram here and explains how we take the measurements from a table up here, which I'm not going to give you the actual measurements for. And we start with drawing a center line and then a water line. And the water line is the reference mark for when all of these frames are set up. And so we measure up from the keel depth, then the shear depth, and then we take our shear width and our keel width, and then we just create a really simple upside down trapezium. And of course, the frames, the bulkheads are dory in shape. That is, they have only one single chine and a flat bottom, which is the simplicity of the Janus design. And so here I've already marked out and built one of my bulkhead templates using Richard's system of drawing a center line, marking out the keel width and then the shear width, and then using my master deck camber curve, which I made using a bendy piece of aluminium. In the plans, Richard talks about using a piece of string. I'm not sure if you can get the light there on that. But that piece of string, to create this curve here, would have to be over 3 meters long. And I tried that and it didn't work, so I used a bit of aluminium. And then I cut this bit of MDF on my router table over there. I have the the bandsaw back on top for now. And this is my master deck camber, which I used and I created. So now I'm going to take you guys through the process of marking out a bulkhead. You start with your center line and you measure out your shear width and then your keel width, and then using a straight piece of aluminium, look at that guy, join them up and they'll create the outside of the bulkhead. And then here I'm using some weights and my piece of aluminium to draw the deck curve. There we go again. But instead I found out that some clamps and some angles worked really well to hold the edges in place. And then I bent it just using my hand to the point in the middle of the deck, and that created that perfect curve for me. First time, looks great. I'm going to use this technique every time now. So with the bulkhead drawn out on my board, it's now time to start making the template. And the first thing I'm going to do is secure a piece of MDF, a fairly wide piece, onto my board, make sure it's square with the edge. And I'm going to use my vernier calipers, the pointy ends of them, to follow the curved line and score into the MDF that curve. And I'll use my pencil just to darken it up, make sure it's really easy to see. Bring it over to my bandsaw, and you can see there I lowered the bandsaw guide so I get a nice straight cut. This is a fairly cheap bandsaw, so it does tend to want to wander, and I want to try and reduce that as much as possible. I bring that piece over on top of my plans of the bulkhead and make any adjustments as necessary to get it right on the line perfect. Yep, so I give a really good look, make sure I'm happy with it. And then from here, I use my straight pieces of 2 centimeter wide battens, the same MDF battens we cut before, to then mark out the exterior shape of the bulkhead pattern. And it's quite simple. I look at it, I put it over the line, I'll cut it with my hacksaw, as you can see here, maybe touch it up a little bit with some sandpaper, and then simply hold it in position, and I get my staples, and then I just staple it all together really simply. I probably put about 4 or 5 staples on each joint. And then it's off to the other side. So I need to get a perimeter for the router table to follow around on the outside of the bulkhead template. And I also need a perimeter on the inside of the bulkhead template, so that I'll do the outside first, and then I'll repeat that process and put my MDF strips on the inside of that frame as well. But it's a simple process. I take my time and I make sure I get it absolutely perfect, remembering that any mistakes I make in this bulkhead template will be transferred to the actual bulkheads themselves. And I just don't like that. I want things to be spot on every single time. And hopefully maybe at some point somebody may be able to reuse these templates themselves as well if they want to build a Janus too. So that's it. That's how we build the bulkhead templates. So there's bulkhead 3 done. I reckon if I wasn't filming, it would probably take about 30 minutes to make one, but it's going to be a huge time savings down the track when all I have to do is double side sticky tape this to the frame plywood, zoom around it on the router table, and then do that twice, and job's done. There also needs to be some templates to cut out the notches for the stringers, which I'll make separately, and then I'll do it directly to the plywood frames. I think that's gonna be the fastest way. So I'll crack on. I've got another 5 or 6 of these to make. So I'll get working and I'll check back in with you guys. All right, that's it for this episode. Hopefully the plywood is on its way, because I can't wait to start using that router table and making my templates and getting everything set up to start building. But a massive thanks to everybody who's watching the videos and asking questions and getting behind it and sharing it. I really do appreciate it. So please keep doing that. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, stay up to date with the build, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.